Good morning, all. I'm Robert Knowles, and I'm here with Richard Simpson. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. What's going on, buddy?
Not too much. Not too much. So let's take a quick spin through the chat and welcome everybody around. Welcome, NB Geeks, Positive Candor, Captain Trek. Always good to see you, buddy. Not Ryan Johnson, Berta Prey 5, Kapla, Colin P. Smith, welcome. DDP Myers.
Purple Valkyrie.
Welcome all. So today we're going to have a little bit of fun. We normally have been doing these live streams and we've been talking about certain points in history. Well, today we're going to raise a little hell. And Richard and I were sitting and talking about, this stream, and we figured you cannot raise hell without having someone at the table. So without further ado, welcoming to History with R&R, the god of mischief himself, Loki.
Bring a little fire and brimstone to R&R.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you so very much for having me on.
Anytime, Loki. Anytime.
Today's topic is going to be, okay, there are way too many people who who just decide to change things to fit their narrative, and today we're going to blast those people who do that to history. How's that?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I'm going to get a little public service announcement. Since I do this history channel with Richard, and before I even did this history channel with Richard, I watch a lot of history documentaries, and some of them are better than others. However, don't say I didn't do anything for you, because I'm about to show you a history documentary. And this is the only time you're going to actually see a channel that we're going to talk about today. But
okay, yep. Keep in mind, I want to put this little project in here. The only problem I have with this channel is this documentary.
Yes, timeline is normally good. However, this documentary, The Hunt for U-479. Well, I happen to be a World War II nut, and anything to do with World War II, I have probably watched or am going to watch. And so I came across this. It was a 3-hour documentary for a hunt for a lost U-boat. Well, this documentary should have been titled The Hunt for Everything But the Damn U-479, because they never find the damn thing. They never go look for the damn thing. And they spend 3 hours, 3 episodes looking at a whole bunch of other shipwrecks in the Baltic, except for this one. It is a complete and waste of time. So please, my friends, if you ever see Hunt for U-479 in your recommended list, avoid it like the damn plague, because that's 3 hours I'll never get back. Anyway.
But they're usually good. They're usually good. What the hell happened here?
I have no idea. They let I kid you not, Loki, and every Thursday we watch a show that makes us want to drink. I swear to God, the writers of this documentary are even worse than Star Trek Discovery writers. I shit you not. These idiots rented a boat for a month. They paid for a underwater dive team. They paid for underwater film equipment. And they never went looking for this damn submarine. Not once. Not a single damn time.
Okay, I want to break out my alter ego here and address a comment from Purple Valkyrie. My undeniable rule of life number 20 states that now I forgot. Jeez, my knee. It talks about people who are okay. Yes, I now remember. Sorry. People who refuse to learn from history are destined to be dumbasses.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay? Changing history to suit your agenda doesn't accomplish anything other than making people stupid.
Yes. And so before we transition into the old history that is painted with an interesting brush, I want to while I still have my soapbox, yell and scream about these idiotic modern historians. So, folks, there are people out there these days that consider themselves modern, quote unquote, modern historians. And I'm not going to name any channels or anything like that, but they consider themselves modern historians.
Revisionists.
And to give you an idea of some of the things that they're pushing and that are actually making it into history books, which is the scariest freaking part of this, okay? This is making it into the curriculum now. Everyone knows who went to school back when I did that in 1941, the Germans were kind of kicking the Russians' butt, and Stalin had a breakdown, and he went into his bunker for 3 days. His own staff were so scared, they wouldn't approach him for 3 days. 3 days. And then he finally came around because one of his generals approached him and said, "The nation needs you."
Look, boss, shit's getting deep here.
Yeah. We need you back in Moscow, like yesterday. Now, these revisionist history are rewriting it that Stalin didn't have a depression. He didn't crack under pressure. No. Stalin was the hardest working man in the Soviet Union. And he worked himself to exhaustion. And that is why he was down for 3 days. And they base this on new documents that came out of the USSR after the fall of the Soviet Union. But they don't stop to think that the person writing these documents probably didn't want to be in Siberia. So they're not going to write that Stalin had a mental collapse because they like very much not being in Siberia.
Yeah.
But because they found these damn documents that came out after the fall that were written by Stalin's staff, big red flag, that no, we had it all wrong. Stalin worked from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, Monday to Sunday. Was the hardest working man in Russia. This is what's making history books these days. This shit is scary.
Do you know who throughout history has revised history for their own ends? Dictators. That's what dictators do. They rewrite history to suit their own ends, that this has always been the way it is, and that they are glorified, and they are the heroes, and they're the ones that, have gotten the people through everything. They go back and they rewrite history to make themselves look better.
Oh,
Well,
but Loki. Go ahead, Richard.
one of the things that Robert and I were discussing before we came on here is that they're trying to rewrite history. For instance, now, don't get me wrong. I am not propping up any particular political ideology. I'm not giving props to anybody who was a dictator. But all these people going anti-fascist, anti-fascist, anti-fascist. Okay, let's put it into terms, reality terms. The only difference between fascism and communism. Fascism was a national. They wanted people in their own country to be miserable. Communism wanted everybody in the world to be miserable.
And but Loki, going back to Stalin, just one more little thing. If you thought that was a bad revisionist, try this one on for size. Everybody, Loki, your understanding of history is that right before World War II, what happened to the Russian military?
Oh, it was collapsing.
Yeah, but why?
Because the fucking hogs at the trough were eating everything and leaving the rest of the animals to die. They even wrote a book about it.
Yes, and not only that, but Stalin had this thing called the purge.
Yep.
Where he purged a whole bunch of generals. And for the longest time, this was considered a bad thing. That this majorly affected Russia going into 1941. Well, in the most disgusting display of revisionist history, and I mean, even Stalin would blush at this, they are now changing it to the purge didn't affect the Russians at all. If anything, it was a good thing. It got all the old motherfuckers who didn't know what they were talking about out of the way so the young guys could take over. That's what's being put in your history books now.
One of the history documentaries that I watched was talking about the difference between the German army and the Russian army at the beginning of World War I or World War II. Damn. The average age of a general in the German army was 50. And in the Russian army, it was 30.
Yep.
Yeah. But now it's being revisionist history that, oh, the purge didn't do any damage. Oh, and it was much less because, again, the numbers coming out of the USSR after the fall were much lower. And we had it all wrong. And it was all Western propaganda. Sound familiar?
Well, you've got look at it like this, okay? And this is what communism pretty much boiled down to. You had people that were starving. The everyday person, the everyday Joe, not in the military, nothing like that, are starving. You've got soldiers eating out of soup cans. And then you've got the colonels, the commanders, the generals drinking $5,000 bottles of champagne, screwing $1,000 hookers in hotel rooms.
Yep.
And Stalin eating like a big fat hog at the trough. That is what, unfortunately, communism and socialism boils down to.
Yes, everyone at the main table does very well.
But everybody below that.
Well, and what started that was the fact that Stalin decided that all the farms were now owned by the government.
Yep.
And some of the farmers went, hey, whoa, stop. No, well, we'll give you this, but we need to keep this. And Stalin went, no, you're giving it all to us. And there was a few places that decided that, no, we're not giving you anything. Screw you. So he sent in the troops and they took everything, every scrap of food.
Yep.
You don't comply? Fine. you'll die. I don't care. I have people to replace you.
It's and the revision of it is the main focus of today.
Yes.
It's I liken it to like this. I decided to look up what college professors make, just salary wise. Okay. And the average college professor in the United States makes between $50,000 and $70,000 a year, but some of them are making into middle six figures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then telling people that capitalism is bad.
That's right.
What page is that on? When you drive home in your fancy luxury car, paid for by capitalism, I might add,
Just a tad.
and quite possibly, taxpayers' money, to tell people that this is the way this is bad, and no. The revision of things like World War II, not only in the Russian front, but the Japanese only attacked because they were backed into a corner.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. As I recall, and now we had this discussion the other day or yesterday on my show. I am not a historian, or so I'm told, because I don't have a degree that says I do.
Yes. I am in that same boat.
Okay. But I know that I know more about history than a lot of these people who are supposed historians who went to college to get a degree in a field that changes at whim, which doesn't make sense to me.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is Japan was already at war with China for years.
Yeah.
Right.
Before Pearl Harbor ever happened.
Centuries.
Right.
Right.
They were at war with China for centuries.
And
This was a long, boiled
and-
out feud.
if you really want to get technical, it was the Allies that screwed China to begin with. Because at the end of World War I, there was a nice little part of China that China was expecting to get back. And instead, to appease the Japanese for helping them out in World War I, the Allies gave it to Japan.
Well, the way Japan looked at it, and if you go into that history, because that is something I actually did when I was in college, was learn about feudal Japan and why Japan was so pissed off with China. The Mongols invaded Japan hundreds of years. Yeah, they tried to. They tried to. Twice. That's right. So they're on all of the honor. You got to understand, Japan at the time, everything was about honor.
Yeah.
It was still old school code of the samurai honor. So it was like in their blood to fight China. It was always going to happen. This was never not going to happen. No matter who didn't want it to happen, whether Germany didn't want it to happen, the US didn't want it to happen, it was going to happen because to them, their honor was on the line.
Yes. It was the same thing why the war couldn't end.
Yeah.
At the end of World War II, there were a lot of talks that don't get talked about before the bombs were dropped. There's been a lot of, shall we say, top secret documents that are no longer top secret that have come to light if you look at it, where there were olive branches sent out from Japan near the end of the war. The problem is the United States wanted unconditional surrender. Japan could not do that because the emperor had to be protected.
Right. Well, there's another thing that goes into play with the end of the war in Asia, that people tend to forget. The bombs dropped on Japan did have a factor in it. I'm not going to deny that. What had the most effect on Japan wanting to surrender at that point is the Soviet Union.
Yeah, the Soviets finally attacked.
And
And not only that, but if you want to look at it this way, there's even more of a sick truth to that. That there were 5 cities that the American bombers were not allowed to drop bombs on in World War II. And the reason that those 5 cities were spared was because they were developing the bomb. And when they dropped the bomb, they didn't want to drop it on somewhere that had been bombed to hell. They needed somewhere that hadn't been touched so that when they dropped the nuke, they knew what the actual damage was.
right.
So those 5 cities were spared until they dropped the nukes.
You get into the Soviets pushing towards China and Japan. One thing people forget, Stalin and Hitler were all buddy before Germany attacked Russia. They were all hand in hand. We're in this together. You know, we're gonna fight the good fight. And then Hitler decided, you know what? I want Russia. I want all of Russia.
But
well, no. Hitler wanted all of Russia back when he wrote his book.
right.
Oh, yeah.
The problem was Hitler didn't want a war on 2 fronts. So he made a deal with the devil so he could go west, or so he could go into France without having to worry about Russia crossing the border. And Stalin needed it as well because Stalin's military wasn't ready at that point.
Nope.
And they decided that, well, okay, there's this little thing called Poland, and I want this half and you want this half. So here's the easiest way to do this.
Which historically Poland has been split up between the Austrians, Germans, and Russians for centuries. Constantly. They've been doing that for years, or for centuries. The other thing at play here is that England or the United Kingdom refused to play ball. Hitler was hoping that England would just get out of the war.
Yeah, he was hoping for a peace treaty. The minute the Churchill got elected, that wasn't happening. But the other thing too is Stalin was actually very, very shocked, and Colin P says it here, that Hitler attacked. And he shouldn't have been, because all of his spies, Russia, to the end of the fall of the USSR and post USSR, have a wonderful spy network. I've always had a wonderful spy network. And they were telling Stalin, they're getting ready here. This is, you got to be watching over. And Stalin would call them outright liars. Because Stalin was steadfast convinced
that the treaty meant something.
That Hitler wouldn't be stupid enough to have a war on 2 fronts. And so he had the intel, but he called the intel bullshit. Until, well, oops, Barbarossa kicked off.
But what kind of revisionist history would you like to pound on right now, Loki?
Anything that takes away from the lessons learned and why you don't do what some of these people do. Stalin was not, I repeat, not a hard-working lover of Mother Russia. All Stalin cared about was himself and his own history. All he cared about was his own legacy and what he was doing. He didn't give a shit about Russia. He didn't give a shit about his soldiers. He didn't give a shit about his generals. He'd have one of his generals shot in the street in front of God and everybody if they made the slightest mistake. This was not a nice person. This was not someone that cared about his people, that cared about what he was doing. All he cared about was himself and keeping himself fed at the trough.
And it wasn't even his people.
No,
he was Georgian.
Yeah.
He wasn't Russian.
If you need to know anything about Stalin, I mean, all you need to do is, well, one, watch our series. Shameless plug. Secondly, Stalin, after Lenin died, Stalin did this big revisionist history that he was his right-hand man. Lenin hated the motherfucker.
Yeah.
But if you were in Russia at the time, you were led to believe that Stalin was his right-hand man. Stalin was there every step of the way. He wasn't. He had movies made to show that he was, but he wasn't.
Right. The fact that, okay, there is a plaque in, I don't even remember where exactly it is in Illinois, but it has a quote from Abraham Lincoln. And at the bottom of it, it says, Abraham Lincoln, Democrat. Wait a minute. As I recall my history, Abraham Lincoln led the first time the Republican Party existed in this country.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
But according to apparently somebody in Illinois, Lincoln was a Democrat.
Well, it fits the narrative.
If you want to see what Stalin ordered his generals to do, his military to do, there's a movie. And originally I wasn't going to see this movie when it came out because I was like, I don't need to see a movie about the Russians fighting World War II. But that movie is called Enemy at the Gates. And then all you need to know is the first 10 minutes. When the soldiers retreated from battle, the Russian soldiers retreated from battle at the Battle of Stalingrad, they were gunned down by the officers leading the army by machine gun fire. This is what you got if you did not die. Just charge off and die. You didn't even get a gun. One guy got a gun. One guy got a clip. That should actually happen.
Yeah.
That actually happened.
Yeah.
This is how he felt about his soldiers. This wasn't his generals giving his command. This was what they termed the boss. The boss. Look at the boss, son. And they've got the Russian national anthem playing in the background. Oh, be proud. The boss is looking down on you. And if you make one little mistake, you little bastard, guess what? We're going to shoot you. We're going to put a bullet in your fucking head, and it's going to be on the boss's orders.
Yep.
But the history has been, it's being revised across the board. Somebody brought up in the chat that they're talking about a black Anne Boleyn. Now, forgive me, but as I recall from history, there weren't a whole lot of black people in Europe at the time. I understand your need for diversity, but if you're going to go historically inaccurate by putting your diversity into a place where it doesn't belong, that's a problem. Just because there weren't, I mean, let's face it, most of Europe didn't even know Africa existed. They'd forgotten about it at that period in history. So,
and boy, did they regret when they remembered it.
the revisionist history that, for instance, my family comes from Pennsylvania. Well, every white person in the United States at that time owned slaves. No, it was specifically written into the charter of the Pennsylvania colony that there was no slavery, period. Of course, it was written in the charter that there were no Irish allowed there either, but that's beside the point. They don't accept the fact that there were people in the Civil War fighting against slavery. It was all, everybody was racist. No, that's not how it happened. North Africa was, but most of Africa wasn't. Most of Africa they didn't even know existed, because there was no way to get across the desert. Past that, it's just revision of anything is just bugging the hell out of me. But in this case, it's the history that is being changed because somebody doesn't like the truth.
Well, and there are even what a lot of people don't understand is history is a lot of times written by the people who came out on top.
Right.
So World War II, a lot of that is ally heavy. So the brush that the Allies are painted with and the brush that the Axis are painted with are very different brushes. But the Allies weren't exactly, shall we say, there was blood on their hands as well.
Right.
One of my favorites, and Colin P, you're probably going to get mad at me, but sorry. This is kind of my personal thoughts on it, but it's also one of the more, I will preface this by saying it is debated. So there's this little thing in World War II called the Battle of Britain. And if you listen to the modern telling of the Battle of Britain, when London was being bombed, it was this horrendous act. How dare the Germans do this? What they don't mention are a couple of things. One, the original bombing of a city of Britain was done by accident. Then the British immediately bombed Berlin. Secondly, at that time, before they started doing the bombing raid on the cities, they were bombing the airfields. Britain couldn't sustain that long term. Had the Germans not bombed the cities, Britain would have lost the Battle of Britain.
Yes.
Because they would have lost the air superiority, because the Germans would have focused on the radar and they would have focused on the airfields. You can replace an airman. You can't replace a plane as fast.
Nope. No, and they were turning wrenches as fast as they could to keep those planes in the air. There are planes that went up that should have never been in the air, that were leaking oil. They were leaking fluid. They should not have been up in the air, but they were those British airmen were taking those planes up like fucking superheroes, saying,
Yeah.
I don't care if this engine's barely working or not. We're going up and fighting to the death against the Germans.
Yes. And so in a lot of ways, every bomb that landed on a London city, in a British city, was one less bomb landing on an airfield, one less bombing raid aimed at a strategic military target. So as long as they kept bombing the cities, the Air Force was able to regroup. They were able to rebuild, and they were able to fend off the Germans. Had they not, well, Battle of Britain probably would have gone very different.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that a lot of people overlook is the bombing campaign that went the other way.
Yep.
Dresden.
Hamburg.
Dresden impeccably was very low military target.
Yep.
That city was leveled to the ground in an inferno. But that's okay. The Allies did it. Like I said, there are very different tellings of an act depending on which side's doing it.
And the other side of but here's the problem. Now we're getting to a point where, well, yeah, this is the British spin to this. This is the American spin. This is, and now we're getting this, well, this is the way we're going to tell it because this is the way we believe it should be told.
Yeah.
Who cares about the truth?
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Okay. Everybody's wrong on both sides. And this is the way it's going to be from now on, according to the history. The people who teach history, the people who write the books. That's the problem.
Yep.
You guys know that I work with an author. I'm not gonna name him here because you guys know I don't have to. You know who he is.
Yes.
Recently working on getting one of his works published. There was an editor, and when I say this editor is full bore blue-haired Landwell, you know exactly what I mean.
Yep.
He fought and he fought and he fought to keep his book the way he wanted to it. And eventually he was able to do that. He was able to fight it. And this publishing house came to him. He didn't go to them. They wanted him, so he had leverage. And I told him that. I said, you've got leverage here. They came to you. They wanted you. They wanted you with this new publishing house. If you've got to go to the top, to the person that said, we want you, do that. Do not do this. And here's the issue. They have been taught that even if something is the truth, to find fault in it. Even if something is the way it should be, to find fault in it. You take history, you take film, you take documentaries, and even if it's the truth, you find fault in it. That is your job. That is what you were supposed to do. That is what they are being taught in college, is to find fault in it, even if it is the way it is. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. But their job is now find fault in perfection, even if there is no fault. And if you have to make it wrong, you go out of your way to make it wrong. Well, we have looked at this and found this. And even if that is one big giant line of bullshit, that is what they are being taught to do. That is what they are being told to do. That is what their job is supposed to be, is to find fault and wrong, even when there is none, just for the sake of it. Ain't that a mind fuck?
Yeah, you must find fault with it, even if it is correct.
That's right.
And in history, that happens a lot. I mean, there are when I started really researching history, I made a point to look into every conspiracy theory there is. So if it's written off as a conspiracy theory, I usually look into it. And the reason being is once in a while, there's a kernel of truth in there. And the reason it's written off as a conspiracy sometimes, it's not because it's a conspiracy, but it's an easy way to get the populace to ignore that telling. Because if you paint it off as a conspiracy, well, nobody wants to have their name branded with it, so it goes away. It's just like branding the old saying, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Just depends on which side of the coin you're on.
Yeah. And we've gotten to the point where if changing history, or even modern history, even changing what's happening now, if you can change it to fit your narrative, then that's all that matters.
Well, and what am I? Sorry, go ahead, Richard.
If somebody does something that people would consider a terrorist action, but it fits a narrative, then it's not terrorism anymore.
Yeah.
Colin P. Smith, mostly peaceful.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and here's one. It drove me nuts during the war in Afghanistan. We're kind of going real modern, but that's okay. It drove me crazy because there was a line put out by your wonderful media, and ours too, and your NBCs, your CBS, whatever. There was a line they said that blew my mind because everybody bought it hook, line, and sinker. The problem was they kept hiding in these underground bunkers. And nobody knew where these underground bunkers were. And if you studied history, you would call bullshit on that. Because if you went into those underground bunkers, you know what you'd see on the walls? Take a guess, Loki.
Tell me, brother.
Made in the USA.
Right.
Because they were put there by the United States when Russia invaded Afghanistan. But the United States didn't know where they were. Bullshit. But because nobody pays any goddamn attention, it was bought hook, line, and sinker. You telling me somebody doesn't have a map somewhere? Where do we put those bunkers? I don't know. We lost the map. Convenient.
Today's history goes hand in hand with the media and the spin that the media puts on it. I trained as a journalist, or started to, but then I realized that journalism requires objectivity, and that doesn't exist anymore. People who are writing the history books, that's supposed to be objective. Most of the people doing it can't even spell the word anymore.
Well, this is something that's been going on for a long time, guys. I was in the 7th grade, so this was 26, 27, 28 years ago.
Thanks, Logan.
And my my history teacher put a poster up in front of her door. It was on the front door of her classroom, and it said Christopher Columbus, wanted for RAPE, wanted for crimes against humanity, wanted for biological warfare, wanted for genocide, all this long giant list of problems. And I went to my dad, who was a history professor. He was a history professor. After he got out of the Navy, that's what he did. He became a history professor. And I said, I told him I walked into her room and she had this poster up on the front door of her classroom, and this is what it said. And he said, these fucking wackos want you to believe that it was all evil, and it was all for the intent of evil, and all these historical figures are evil. He said, I had to deal with it a little bit when he was in college. Obviously, it wasn't as bad then, and he went to a really good, prestigious college. It wasn't as bad then as it is now, but he still had to deal with it. And when I went to college, I had to deal with it. I had to write the most insane paper about the planet. It was ecological science or some shit like that. And I had to write a paper about how the only way to save the ecosystem was to destroy the entire human race. Get rid of all the people on the earth. And I got a fucking perfect grade for that paper too. That was the only perfect grade I got in that class, because it wasn't until the end that I figured out this is what this motherfucker wants. He wants me to write about the end of the human race, saving the planet and saving the animals. And that's exactly what he wanted, because that's the way they want you to think, and that's the way they want you to believe. And if I hadn't been older, if I had been a teenager, imagine how impressionable I could have been. Imagine how that might have affected me as a teenager, as a young adult. These kids that are 18 that don't know any better, that go into this and they think, oh, well, this is the way it is, and they start fighting for that. It was only because I was older and I was experienced and I was in my late 20s, early 30s that I was like, no, this is complete bullshit. I'm going to do it to get through this class and get the grade. But I walked out of that knowing that Bucker's wacko. It's a whack ass idea, and it's a whack ass way to think of things. And this is the exact same way. The revisionists are doing the exact same thing. We want it our way. We're going to say it was this way because we believe this. And dictators and people that want to take over and control the narrative and control the way you think and control the way you feel and control what you're going to do. That is what they want to do. And that is why they do what they do.
It just boggles my mind, because I think logically, always have. To me, history is facts, not narrative. Changing history to fit a narrative makes no sense in my mind. Of course, I'm guilty of not. I am one of the uneducated masses because I didn't go to college. You know, at least that's what I'm told. But somehow I have privilege. But that's beside the point.
No, it's all bullshit, dude. It's all bullshit. You know what I got in college? I got a piece of paper and I got to look at how those people act. I got a piece of paper. When it came down to it, I learned about chemicals in the brain. I learned about why people do things. And I got a piece of paper that said, yes, you can go and be a therapist. You can do drug counseling. That's all I got. That's all I got. It's not, I'm not sitting here. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, because I have a degree, I know something. No, that was there before I went to school. Yeah. The experiences of my life, the people I were around, the influence of chemical substance abuse that I grew up around, not only from friends, but from family too. That gave me the knowledge I needed and the understanding I needed to be good at what I was doing, not that fucking piece of paper. It was my life experience that drove me to want to do what I did, not some fucking piece of paper. That doesn't, going to college doesn't give you anything but a piece of paper that says, yes, you are qualified to do something. It's what's inside you and what you've learned and what you've experienced that drive you. I guarantee you, if Admiral Doom hadn't served, if he hadn't served, there would be things he wouldn't be talking about right now. That's a life experience. He signed that piece of paper. I signed that piece of paper. It's a life experience. I served 2 years. I didn't serve anywhere near the time that Admiral here served. And I don't even like to talk about it. It's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, guess what? I did that. It's not something I'll talk about like I'm proud of. I got out on a medical discharge. But I signed that fucking piece of paper. I got through boot. I experienced what I experienced, and I'm grateful for that. But just because I signed that piece of paper doesn't mean that I was any good at what I did. Just because I got that degree doesn't mean that, oh, I'm better than anyone else. That doesn't elevate me. It's our actions. It's what we do. That is what elevates us, not pieces of paper.
And unfortunately, we've gotten to a point where it's the people with the paper that change the history and teach that, and then it gets to the lower, then they put it on YouTube or TV, and it becomes the gospel of history.
Yes.
And that's then it becomes the new known history.
Well, the biggest myth that is still believed to this day, because it's taught to this day. Germany started World War I.
As I recall, World War I started because Germany said, Austria, do what you want.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
they took the blame at the end of the war.
Right.
Yeah. So because of that, and because of a certain piece of paper that was in direct lead to World War II, thanks, France, it is believed that it was all Germany's fault. Germany and Germany alone, which is not true. Germany had a part, but they weren't the sole ignition switch. World War II, yeah, okay, you can go there. World War I, not so much.
Yeah, Colin, here's a history side note that I discovered. In the Treaty of Versailles, deep down in the bowels of the Treaty of Versailles, there is one clause that defines the pitch of the A note internationally. What did that have to do with the war? But that's a side thing that we'll get to at some point in this channel, because we get onto all those little. The point is, we can't. Sitroom makes a good point there. We're getting to the point where those of us who actually know history, not the whitewashed history, not the propaganda history, those who, like myself, when I sit down, I write scripts for our radio shows. I sit down and I write scripts for our Friday shows. I've got 2 monitors here, and they're usually about 8 to 10 different sources that I'm running through.
Yep.
I don't depend on one source or this source or that source for all the information. I weigh all the information and see, trying to make sense of it all, because
Yeah.
everybody has their own spin on history. I'm not going to say, if you watch history documentaries on YouTube, even ours,
you gotta recognize the spin.
even ours, don't take what we tell you as gospel, because we could be wrong.
Yeah.
We could have missed something.
Not only that, but with history, there are so much there. It doesn't matter what topic you pick. There's so much out there on every little thing that's happened, and the further back you go, the worse it gets.
Believe it or not, that is college in a nutshell. What Doom just said, what he said about the multiple sources, that is college in a nutshell. Any paper you write, any thesis you write, anything you write, you have to have a multitude of sources saying, yes, everything I am saying in this paper is backed up by this evidence.
Yep.
That is college in a nutshell.
My history blog that I write every day, usually, I will pick one source and quote it, but it's usually, most of my stuff doesn't have to do with a historical event, and I can get away with using maps and newspapers as a single source. But if it's something major like the Stalin stuff I'm writing right now, I'm not going to depend on one source or two sources. I'm going to have lots of sources because there's a lot of information out there. And yeah, I have some skewed views on history. But they're all based in a factual nature. So
Yeah, if you want a good laugh, just get Richard on the topic of France.
oh, I could tell that story right now because this gives you a prime example. Okay.
Oh, what does Admiral have to do with the French, yeah? Look,
Okay.
he sits here and he smokes, yeah, like a Frenchman. Ho.
Okay, here it comes down. This is my historic view of France. The French are pacifists. They hate war. It's not hard to be a pacifist when you have only won one war in 1,300 years. Okay, that was the 100 Years' War. That's the only one that won. As a matter of fact, Germany has won as many wars as France has. And Germany won that war against France. Just saying.
Throwing that out there.
My whole, I got into an argument with a relative of my wife because she was going on about how great France is. And I said, I don't trust the French. I don't trust any vulgar Latin speaking Germanic peoples that have 8 words for surrender.
Hey, maybe we now know who's writing the modern vocabulary. They seem to kneel a lot.
My point is,
Yes.
Just saying.
your point of view all comes down to you cannot put your point of view into history and expect it to be the gospel.
No.
Because until the cleansing happens, and it's happening now, until the cleansing happens, there's still going to be people out here going, nope, because I have a source that says different. Well, your source is wrong and racist. No, it isn't.
Well, my favorite, like, just it's not like I'll be watching a history documentary at World War II or World War I, especially, and what it's not done out of malice. It's just done because people are lazy. They'll go, the British troops attacked such and such. Well, if you actually looked at that unit that they're talking about, they might be Australian or Canadian or Indian, but they're lumped in as the British. But it could be a Canadian corps. It could be a corps from Australia, but they're lumped in as the British.
It's the whole point is that they're whitewashing history to fit an agenda. And I hate to mention this, but their agenda wasn't around 2,000 years ago when Rome was in its heyday. They weren't around 8,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago or whenever when Egypt was in its heyday. But they'll be glad to rewrite it to fit their narrative. And now it's getting into YouTube. There was one, and we're not going to mention it by name, but there was one YouTube channel that just absolutely pissed Robert off when he watched it. It was about World War II. And the more this guy talked, the more... okay. When Rob and I were having a conversation about it, the more this guy talked, the more Robert just wanted to climb through the internet and kick this guy's ass.
I believe that.
Yep.
Okay.
Let me just put it this way: I get that bastard on a screen like this, and the argument between Loki and I on Picard will be nothing.
Okay,
Child's play. I will roast that son of a bitch.
Hey, that's the way you're going to get out of Canada, dude. Crawl through the internet.
Yeah, there we go. Bloody hell. That guy pisses me off. Well, okay, I'll give you an example. Loki. Okay. One of he's made 6 videos on this, that the SS were the worst trained troops of the German military.
No, they were the elite.
I'm not even kidding.
No.
Yeah.
No, they had
do
the
you now
best training.
see why? Do you now see why I say roasted over a pick?
No, they had the best training in the military. The only force that was even, and they weren't even really a force. The only thing that came close in Germany was the Gestapo, as far as monetary funding and.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Because the SS had the newest stuff, the greatest stuff, before the rest of the army did.
Yep.
Before the rest of the Wehrmacht did. But there is somebody on there arguing that, well, the SS sucked. That
and the reason that they do that is because they go to 1945, when the SS was watered down, and really, I mean, they were pretty much scrambling, and they don't talk about the early SS. They talk about the SS that were young, fresh out of camp, fresh out of Hitler Youth, not the trained guys.
the ones that were running with their hands above their heads, going west to hopefully get to the American lines.
Yeah, those ones.
But
oh, Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
But it's just there are so much. One thing I really wanted to stress on this one is when you're looking at history, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be wars. It could be the sinking of the Titanic. It could be anything. Never trust one person or one source or one book, or even if you trust this person with all, there's going to be a spin. And the key to understanding history at its core is to be able to recognize the spin and read between the lines. There's always a reason for everything.
Oh yeah, it's the things that come to mind to my mind are movies, history type movies. Titanic pisses me off every time I.
Leonardo
movie I fell asleep to four times. And it was still going.
Loki. That movie would have been so much better if they would have just added the part I wanted. By the end of that movie, I wanted Leonardo DiCaprio to fall off the back of the ship, bounce off the propeller, and hit the water. That would have made that movie so much better. And they actually had an extra do it. So I wish they would have just Leonardo DiCaprio do that, and it would have been better.
My big problem with Titanic is, okay, I understand you have a story to tell and yada, yada, yada. There were 2,200 people on that ship. 1,500 of them died. And you told the story of some fictional character.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Well, the cook was the story about the cook is like legendary. I don't know if you know about the cook that survived, but he was so drunk. He was so drunk. The alcohol level in his body was so high when he hit that water that he survived hours in the water. His blood didn't freeze. His body didn't freeze.
Not only that, but then there's the unsinkable woman who, quite frankly, while she was still alive, if I got on a boat and I saw her on it, I'd be getting off the fucking thing. Because that woman, believe this one or not, was on the Olympic when it got struck, was on the Titanic when it sank, and then was on the Britannic when it sank. And she survived all three. Yeah. I see her on a boat. I'm getting off of it.
One of the few movies that I have ever actually seen in the theater was Apollo 13. And I actually heard a lady in the auditorium when we're watching that movie. Are they going to make it back? Really? Did they not teach you this? Never mind.
Yeah, that's what you say. Never mind. Let's just, and it is crazy because we are forgetting history. Even recent history we're forgetting. We're not teaching it. It's not politically correct, or it doesn't fit the modern narrative, or it's not good enough. So we have to spin it or forget it. But so my main point of this was, I'd say if you learn anything from this channel, no matter how many radio shows we do, how many exposés on people we do, if you learn and take anything away from this channel, when you dive into history, make sure you don't just read the cover. Read more than one source. If you're gonna research a part in history, look at it from both sides.
Do your
because
homework.
If you don't look at it from both sides, you're not going to get the full picture.
And I'm not even going to say both sides, because there are multiple sides. No matter.
Yes.
One American author. One American viewpoint is different from another American viewpoint, which is different from a French viewpoint, which is different from an English viewpoint. And in the case of Great Britain, you got an English viewpoint, a Scottish viewpoint, a Welsh.
Yeah. There's many cooks in the kitchen.
Do
There
your
is-
research.
There is no one view of history. There is not one source of history. I will tell you every day of the week. I love this subject. I do a lot of research to write my scripts. I don't get everything. There are little things that I have to leave out. There are major things I have to leave out. But I am not the only source for this stuff. And there are several history channels out there on YouTube that'll tell you, sometimes we screw up. Sometimes we don't put out everything. Sometimes we ignore things. And the most important thing is to realize that look at history objectively and look at it from multiple viewpoints, because something you thought was absolutely something that you were told to be was the absolute truth might not be. Garrick on Deep Space Nine said it best. Well, which ones Bashir basically said, which of your stories are true? Well, they're all true.
Yep.
Even the lies, especially the lies.
Yep.
Yeah.
It just comes down to that.
Yep.
I'd like to say that most of the people that watch channels like us are the most intelligent people on YouTube. I'm not saying anything you don't already know. I'm saying I am fallible at times, so don't trust me completely. But you guys know what if there's something you're interested in, you know that you're going to do your homework on it. Period. Right?
Absolutely.
And if either one of these guys are wrong, they own it, ladies and gentlemen. It's not one of those things where they're going to fight even when they know they're wrong about something. They will own that shit if they are wrong.
Absolutely. Well, I know Doom's had a long shift, and I went and did it. I didn't do it all stream, damn it. There I went and did it. Tells you how tired I am. All right. But I'm going to thank everyone in chat. I'm going to thank everyone for coming. But I am going to throw a couple things out there. So this Friday, we're going to be releasing Stalin Part 3.
It could be Friday. It could be Saturday.
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, depending. Because you'll have to bear with us this week, because we are doing a major radio show next week. I can tell you that the script itself without credits is 9 pages long. So you will have to bear with us this week. And making her debut on the radio show will be Purple Valkyrie.
Ooh.
She will be the star of the show as Catherine the Great. So we are very happy and honored to have Purple Valkyrie on board for this radio show.
And who plays her husband?
Chris Knight from the Real Review 3000.
Wow. That's going to be a hell of a show.
And of course, Loki is our official narrator.
Oh shit. Is Peter coming back, or or can I do it as Loki?
It's up to you, my friend. How about that? We'll go with that.
Yes. Catherine, where's my spotted dick? Yeah.
Thank you, Mountains. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
The radio shows, I love doing those, and this one's going to be our biggest production ever. And I actually, Colin, she doesn't have to be a real Russian, because both Catherine and Peter III were German.
You know, oops. Oh, darn.
The Russian nobility wasn't. So, yeah. But due to my work schedule, Stalin might be a little late.
Yes. And well, I'm going to be editing together about 9 different speaking points. So yeah, I might be like pulling my hair out by the end of the weekend, but that's okay. I'll have it out by Tuesday morning.
Writing script. Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Thank you all for showing up. This is something we do as a labor of love. We love this particular subject. When Robert came to me and asked if I wanted to do it, how long did it take me to say yes?
30 seconds. Yeah. And I one last shameless plug here. We're at 75 subscribers last time I checked. We're 25. Well,
no, we're 79.
79 now. Okay, so now we're 21 away from 100. So please, folks, share the shit out of this, and let's try to get us up to 100 before Christmas.
And remember these.
Oh, yes.
I gotta get one of those. I gotta order one of those.
And in the description, there is the link to Admiral's store where you can get that very cup along with all of his other cups
and a t-shirt
and shirts and all the wonderful merchandise. Also, for the first time, I guess I'll throw it out there. My personal PayPal is in the description. It's been there all the time. I just never mentioned it. But anyway, if you want to support us, best way to do it is through the store. I definitely would draw your attention to that. Take a look through there and see what you can find. And if you like something, grab it. And because Doom does some pretty good, cool stuff through the store. I'll let him talk about that. And there I said Doom again, damn it.
Yeah, well. Look at the studio I'm in.
Yeah.
Because, but this is one of those things, yes, I've been up forever, but I don't have a problem doing these because I appreciate everybody who's come in here in our chat. Yeah, Jeff, we'll be slipping again.
Yes, we aren't going to partially kill you this time.
No.
We're working on it, though. I've got a plan for the next one.
Yes.
And Logan. Oh, well, here's a real big spoiler. So this radio show on December the 1st will be starring Purple Valkyrie. Now, the radio show that will drop, let me see here. Let me get a calendar.
The 15th.
The 15th will be starring Loki.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
So,
yeah.
And I think that one is the one where Jeff has to learn how to swim.
Yeah. Jeff might have to learn how to swim on that one.
Again, because remember, he had to learn how to swim on the Titanic, too.
Yeah, he had to learn how to swim on the Titanic, yeah.
So. We do this because we love it. We do.
I can see why. And it shows in your work, guys. It really does.
Thank you, Loki. All right, folks. Till next time, another point of history. Take her easy.